In the era of Henry VIII and the Tudor justice system, Anne Boleyn would have been considered guilty without a trial. This would have been due to the guilty until proven innocent way of thinking in the 1500s, and the law required that accused proved their own innocence. Defendants would also be unaware of the evidence against them, or even the exact charges being brought forwards, thus making defending yourself extremely difficult, if not impossible. Anne Boleyn was no exception to the unfair law system that was parted to Henry's reign. Historians through the years believe that Anne was innocent, a woman framed by Henry VIII's loyal servant Thomas Cromwell. It is thought that Anne disagreed with Cromwell's plans for the monasteries, and Anne's pro-French stance on diplomacy would have been detrimental to Cromwell's hoped alliance with the Holy Roman Empire. It is also thought to be true that Anne's almoner had attacked Cromwell. Another theory is that Henry himself framed Anne so that he could marry his third wife, Jane Seymour. The charges included adultery, incest, and conspiracy against the king. All charges are believed to be false accusations to enable Henry VIII to then marry again to produce a male heir to the throne. Anne quickly fell from Henry's favour when she was unable to bear a son, having only given birth to one boy, but unfortunately he was stillborn. Although Anne did give birth to Elizabeth I, this was not enough for Henry. Anne was also clashing with Cromwell on matters of foreign policy and the king's finances. Cromwell is thought to have then facilitated Anne's demise and most certainly acted on behalf of the king's wishes. Cromwell was party to a secret commission, one that included Anne's father, who one would have assumed tried to warn her, but at this point there was very little she could do. Anne was accused of sexual affairs with male members of the court, some whom were tortured into making confessions, as well as being accused of incest with her own brother, using sorcery to bewitch the king. Anne was sent to confinement at the Tower of London. Her trial took place on the 15th of May 1536. The jury knew what was expected of them in a case of high treason, a case of 6 people conspiring to kill God's anointed sovereign: Anne, her brother George, Lord Rochford, Sir Henry Norris, Groom of the Stall, courtiers Sir Francis Weston and William Bretterton, and musician Mark Smeaton, had little hope of justice. Imperial Ambassador Eustace Chapuis, in his dispatch regarding the trial of the 4 men, wrote that they were condemned upon presumption and certain indications, without valid proof or confession. No witness were produced against Anne, and her brother either, and they defended themselves admirably, with George being described as replying so well charges that several of those present wagered 10 to 1 that he would be acquitted. It was no good though. On the morning of the 19th of May 1536, Sir William Kingston escorted Queen Anne Boleyn from her apartments in the Tower's royal palace, the same apartments where she had stayed before her coronation in 1533, to the scaffold. On the scaffold, Anne made a simple speech, sticking to execution protocol. "Good Christian people, I have not come here to preach a sermon, I have come here to die. For according to the law, and by the law, I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I am come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak of what whereof I am accused and condemned to die, but I pray God save the king, and send him long to reign over you. For a gentler nor more merciful prince was there never, and to me he was ever a good and gentle and sovereign lord. And if any person will meddle of my cause, I require them to judge the best. And thus I take my leave of the world and of you all, and I heartily desire you all to pray for me." The executioner beheaded the Queen with one stroke of his sword, and then her distressed ladies wrapped Anne's remains in white cloth and carried them to the nearby chapel of St. Peter's and Vincula. Nobody had thought to provide a coffin for her burial, so a yeoman wanderer had to fetch an old elm chest, which had once contained bow staves, from the Tower armoury. Anne's head and body were placed in the chest and buried in the chancel near to the remains of her brother, Lord Rochford. By sending Anne to her death, Henry cleared the path to enable him to marry Jane Seymour. a marriage that took place only days after Anne had died, an act carried out by a French swordsman, who was thought to have been sent for even before Anne was found guilty at the trial. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History.